Welcome to Identity Unboxed, where we provide mentorship and promote representation for Black professionals in the advancement of the Black community.
We are seeking guidance from exceptional Black leaders, scholars, and professionals with expertise in their respective fields.
We hope to foster a space that promotes authenticity, inclusivity, and restoration for our listeners while exploring the intersection of our personal and professional lives.
This project is a culmination of our lived experiences as young Black professionals to transform our life trajectories, to overcome adversity and reach triumph.
Our intention is to inspire you on your path to discovering your purpose. Well, welcome, Leilani, to our very first podcast episode of Identity Unboxed. We are so happy to have you. You are the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at University of Washington Advancement, and we are just so excited to learn from you and just learn about how we can advance the Black community. But I would like to start with, if you could describe a transformative experience in your life that led you to identify your passion. How did this experience serve as a catalyst for your career?
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. This is an incredible project. I think that, I take every opportunity to speak to young professionals. That's actually those experiences are transformative for me, each and every time. And I say that because, well, my early career actually started in museums and in the museum world. So I worked at African American Museum, a small nonprofit. It was like a startup museum, and this was during the time when we were about to hit a major economic crisis. So the experience of being part of a team of Black professionals who are dedicated to Black history, art, and culture. That was sort of my real immersion into this world, and probably a big reason why I do the work I do today. The ways that, I was inspired by so many people. I'll talk about that later, but the programs we put together. So there was a moment where somebody had, during my time working, I wore a lot of hats and I did a lot of things, and I was sort of in the arts and culture scene, especially Black and people of color who are artists. I was working with them. I was sort of doing some guerrilla curating at this little local spot, and it was good fun, good times. But I was really like trying to find some connection between sort of the community and how to bring. I was really concentrated on how does museum audiences, how do cultivation work, how does museum membership cultivation work, how does this work? And I sort of decided, well, I think, if you put on a really amazing program that people want to attend, people will come and they'll become members, and this will cycle. And I was fundraising and, doing all this work. But it was this one moment where I sort of gathered Black luminaries, partnered with this other organization and gathered some Black luminaries and invited them to speak. It was at a program called a Pachakacha, which means chit chat or small chat. It's a Japanese onomatopoeia word anyway. So this organization is doing it. So they do these sort of really quick 3-minute talks with folks. And I was really into Afrofuturism at the time, reading a lot. Afrofuturism, Afropunk, big stuff was popping off. It was sort of like the thing. I was reading a lot. And so we gathered these Black luminaries, artists, and choreographers to do this small chat program. And man, like, it was the first time I saw the museum packed with so many different age groups and folks who were engaged, young Black professionals, folks who were even younger before professionals, folks who were really engaged. And I think the energy of that program and like the energy of the room and like the ways that people were engaging with the people who were speaking were incredible. They gave these incredible talks. It's actually recorded, like you can find this at 10 years old now. But that was a moment that I was like, oh, when I can apply like elements of my passion and things that I love and and see how when done right, when you really invite people to a space, when people feel safe in a space, they feel they belong and they're represented in a space, that can have an impact. I can have a deep and lasting impact on folks. I still have people tell me about attending that program like years later. Um, that was a moment where I was like, oh, like once you know that this power is in you, like there is no there wasn't, it wasn't like, oh, well, white folks don't like this, so I can't do this, or this group doesn't like that, and I can't do that. I didn't have any of that. I just moved forward to design this program, and it ended up really, really being very beautiful. And then that's what was like, oh, that's powerful. What else can I put this superpower to? And so there were a few times during that my career in museums where I was like, oh, man, we're having an impact. Like people are showing up, they're engaged. This place is more relevant, more engaged. They're coming in and they're learning about the history and they're seeing the exhibits and they're engaging with these really powerful programs. This is like early years of Black Lives Matter, first wave Black Lives Matter, responsive programs, healing space, becoming a healing space, and inviting people in, really holding that space and container. I found that's sort of a strength for me. So that's where that was transformative.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that detailed
Yeah,
story. And you really touch on the importance of creating space for our community and these spaces that historically excluded us. So to have that is
exactly.
so important. And you really just demonstrate that impact there.
Exciting.
How have you preserved your authentic self in professional spaces that you've inhabited?
Ah, well, while I do have a penchant toward the performance arts myself, can be a bit dramatic, but I have never been great at code switching, but only I think because I I'm bicultural and Black and bicultural, and I've been able to navigate spaces based on a couple points of privilege. One, having a white side of my family, to um, uh, having light skin. So I've had the privilege of being my authentic self um, by these points of privilege that I've carried with me in my identity. And so I acknowledge that because while I can say I've just been able to be my authentic self, and I've been able to do that by asserting my ideas, but also having a way to present them that is, formalized, or that an institution can digest. But I also had this experience in a very small organization where I was able to be, you know, navigate and be creative, and I had to learn a lot very fast and on the fly and invent things. So I have an inventive, I have a role now it didn't exist before. I'm sort of working with my colleagues and creating it as we go. So there are roles that I picked and spaces that I'm in where my authentic self is my authentic strength. I If I were in a role that might have been held before, that might not, and I had to carry something on, or I didn't have a lot of freedom or flexibility to shift and change what I needed to in order to live my purpose and my values, um, it might not work for me. It might work for somebody else, right? So by the choices that been able to make, but also by my holding some values, really strong values that I cannot and I will not try to survive in a space. I will create a space where I can thrive, and that folks who do not hold the privilege that I do cannot just survive. They don't have to just survive. Like I won't tolerate that. So if you want that space, I'm for you and I'm with you, and we're going to shape it, and I'm going to shape it with you. We'll co-create it, but I'm not going to just I can't exist in this space where I have to survive and not thrive. And the way that I thrive is holding on to my values, and that's what I live and work by. I have to. But not everybody, I rarely recognize it. This is a mid-career privilege. This is not often an early career privilege. So for anybody in early career, I say define your values and it will help you make those choices that help you move them forward and live them. The more you're aligned personally with your values, the more you're able to express them in your work, and you can be authentic because you're aligned. You're aligned with what you came to do, and we all have the gifts. So you gotta define those early career values. That sometimes it takes, sometimes you gotta tweak them. That's fine. Um, but don't compromise them.
Thank you so much. I know, especially as young professionals and navigating certain spaces, it's hard to be our authentic selves because we have certain values, but we're afraid of what the reactions will be if we stand by our values. So thank you so much for that advice.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really appreciate that point that you touch on. When you are early in your career, it can be more difficult for you to be able to hold true to those values, especially depending on the space that you're in and what kind of environment has been cultivated in that workspace. And I actually would really kind of like to dive into that point a little bit more.
Mhm.
Throughout, even in your early career, when you face that pushback, what, did you implement? What kind of strategies were you able to implement to overcome some of those challenges?
Ah, so this is when I had less sort of, I guess, flexibility in my sort of creative expression of what I was like, we should do this, and let me try this. Um, it was sort of, where can I where can I learn, right? Where can I learn from this? So there's a few humbling moments where I was early career. I often share this story. Um I was in staff meetings early. I thought I was hot shot, right? Like, yeah, my degree, I'm awesome. I'm gonna tell y'all what everybody should be doing. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna, roll this up. I'm like really feeling myself. And I had a lot of, I say somebody should do this, and somebody should do that, and I had a lot of somebody shoulds. And my boss, Barbara Earl Thomas, who's a mentor, is still to this day, she said, "Ain't you somebody?"
Yeah.
Like, turned it back. I was like, damn.
Right.
Um, okay, let me learn. Let me listen. Let me learn. Uh, I was taught, but I was in a Black led space around Black professionals, but I did deal with, we dealt with donors who said things and did things that were egregious and disrespectful, or people who came in and were harmful. There was harm done to in this space, but um, I had community I talked to. I asked how I can grow and learn. I started to actually invite critique of my work. I had to humble myself, and that was hard because I came in with that whole ego
Mhm.
about what I thought, I knew my values were, and we're gonna do this and we're gonna rock it out, right? Like I really did, but I had so much to learn. Um, and I just sort of I just had to I think that was another turning point where I just said, okay, I can be my authentic self. I can express my views, but it's got to come from a knowledged place. It's got to come from an experienced place. It has to come from, I have to use my wise mind here. And so, and if I couldn't, I, I, s- I vented to my friends. I wrote, I expressed myself in other ways. Um, but having holding always hold though that, you know, the difference between, somebody actually coaching you and somebody being actually like disrespectful or experiencing it. Like bring yourself as much as you can to a space because that's valuable. Like that is so valuable. And consider where that's coming from. Consider how we show up. show up for others as well. A lot of, workspaces, they foster competition and hierarchy in ways that don't serve us. And I think that, and consider that you might have choices. You have choices of where to work. I didn't have the real luxury always of being like, oh, I can quit anytime and go find something else. I didn't feel that. But know that that's coming as you get older. You're like, I choose this position. I choose this place that I work. So, I don't want to stay here. I'll probably go somewhere else. And that's something that just know that's on the horizon as you get older. But that's difficult, especially in financial situations. Like I was in a single mom. I was paycheck to paycheck. So I know that feeling of stuckness.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That is really helpful. And you really highlight the strength and humility and the importance of being a lifelong learner, no matter how far you get or how experienced you are. I think we're always learning from someone. And I was hoping to ask you if there's an influential person in your life that you really looked up to, who would that person be? And how have they kind of helped you inform how you approach your work?
Yeah, thank you. I have a few people I looked up to. I never had I wouldn't say I had a formal mentor. So some folks did, and that's great. I just didn't sort of get into that groove, but I had informal mentors and people I would call friends now. Um, I look up to well, Barbara Earl Thomas was sort of the leader that really showed me how to extend grace, forgive early and often, stick true to your values, don't take no mess, take any BS, but extend grace and move on quickly to the things so we don't get stuck. She's an excellent leader, so that's my sort of first informal mentor, and now she's a dear friend. Uh, you know, Folks that I've looked up to. My current boss, Julie Brown, is an incredible leader, very steady hand, focused, disciplined, uh, great high expectations, um, great teacher in uh, that that work. Um, and I think, I have younger colleagues that I actually look up to. I really do. Like folks that Shiego Phillips, who came in to the museum world, and we're dear friends now, but she taught me a lot about um, detail and growth as the leader, because I watched this person grow as a leader and become an amazing leader. I look up to a lot of colleagues that are early career because they're showing me things that I didn't have, and I really appreciate that. So I have a lot of folks to look up to, but those two women are incredibly important to me, and I think too, to some extent, there's a university universe of like everybody's mentor, but like Ed Taylor
Yeah.
is an incredible, just incredible
I
human
met
being.
yeah.
Like that. So these are people I look up to. Jeanette James is also an incredible human being, and people I've had close. Ricky Hall, also incredible, and people I look up to and sort of try to emulate. But I take the best pieces of folks, understand that they're human and flawed, and put my little sauce on the style. That's all. Yeah.
That's great.
So much. DEI efforts are under increased scrutiny in higher education across the country, at a time particularly where over 40 prohibitory DEI bills have been introduced in 22 states. As a DEI professional and a public-facing leader, how have you seen the work that you're doing and engaged in directly make an impact on marginalized communities in the workplace and beyond?
Oh, yes, this question. This is a big
No,
one.
it's a big one.
So I'll take a couple minutes on this. The work that's happening now. So what's good about Washington State is that not good. what has made Washington State innovative is that we've been under affirmative action for quite some time. So we've had some practice at this, and there are countermeasures like State Bill 524 22. I'm sorry, that requires anti-racism training for all new hires. That the University of Washington has rolled out. Like there are things, there are measures and countermeasures, there are moves and counter moves that are happening here that some states are going to be hit with, and like these things are years down the road for them, right? So hopefully the ways that we've adapted, and I've talked to colleagues all over the country, they're asking us like, how have you gotten through? How are you fundraising with affirmative act under the prohibitions, and how are you doing this work under the prohibition? So we've got some adaptive tools to work with that we are now able to sort of share with other states, which is great. So that's good that we're in that position to support these other institutions. The work of diversity, equity, inclusion has evolved so much over the years. So it used to be a real HR focused engagement, employee compliance, and don't get us sued type of field. And I in my way, because I think I come from this arts background, is I want to push and innovate that work to strategic and full enterprise model, where it's a decision-making model. It is a process model. It's a strategy-making model. It's a business imperative. It's not even optional. So everything is sort of woven into each and every decision that's made, from budgeting to engagement, to not just staff engagement. This is all stakeholder and donors and philanthropy engagement. This should seep into all of the work that we do in ways that make it sort of just part and parcel of and institutionalized, the way things get institutionalized, just as we have to, I don't know, log into a work day or do any other sort of practice that we have to do. It should be, and Ricky Halls in his office is making it, active for the whole institution. But for advancement, I really have to get up here and keep raising the bar to strategy, saying this is a leadership thing. This is a leadership level active practice and initiative. So we all have to engage and plug into this. And my work is to make that make sense, translate that into my plans, strategic plan, dashboard for accountability, making sure that we're moving things forward, and it doesn't just stay in the sort of, let's make sure the staff folk feel they belong, though that's very, very important, but it's also important on so many different levels of the institution. But my work is to keep it broad and strategic, and not, so it's real, it's taken seriously. It's just not a matter of, making sure we don't have bias or discrimination lawsuits. This is about, you have people working for you, engaging with our institution, and if they feel that they don't belong here, or they can't, they're giving the things, the way I say this all the time, the ways we work together impacts the work we do. So yeah, the people in the organization and the ways that we work together in the organization, people feel they belong, they understand the practice of belonging, they understand the practice of making sure that things are equitably distributed, not, and they're able to apply that mindset. You're going to do the things better that you do. You're going to communicate better. On the very most basic level, you're going to make sure people with dark skin are well lit in your photographs, because you care about the representation, and you've asked for help if you don't know it. And we have people that can help you. We have knowledge in-house. These from the very minute things, the stories we tell to make sure people that are represented in their gender correctly, make sure that people have access to what they need to, if they have neurodivergence, and we want to make sure that, why not? Like our organization is made better. So the work we actually do out in the world is impacted by the work we do within the organization. So that's the big big piece of. So I'm
Don't be
trying to
sorry.
push the organization. I get
Thank you.
fired up because I'm like trying to push
Yeah.
the organization and innovate.
Yeah, we appreciate it so much. And I really hear that emphasis on this being a collective effort to further belonging across the University of Washington. And I also really would just like to hear what advice would you have for someone that would like to get into DI, particularly at, I mean, the scale that you're at? You work in such, a large network here in a tri campus community. And what would your advice be for someone that's kind of aiming for that in the future?
Say if you want to get involved in DEI, there is, you know, read a lot, read a lot of books about it. Read the basics, and I've got a lot of resources, but and there's a lot out there. So reading a lot about all facets of it, of the literature that's out there. Getting it depends on what strain you want to go to. I tell folks like I'm not the 101 workshop DEI person.
Right.
I'm your strategist and organizational design person. So decide where you want to go. Do you want to have the conversations about personal journey? Do you want to have the conversations about organizational design and moving and transformational change? There are ways that you think about that, but if you want to go one way, you read about strategy, strategic planning, leadership and accountability, leadership especially. And there's a lot out there. So it depends on where you want to go, but reading, and then there's some certificate programs. I just did one for Cornell, and that's more of a business one. There's some programs out there. But I think more so, you have to get very good at listening. You just have to be a really good listener and really good at understanding the pulse and the needs of folks, because equity is about people, what they need. It's very most fundamental core, and you can go a lot from there, and also find people to talk to who are doing the work.
Thank you. Yeah, listening, such a valuable skill to hone, and it takes time. So that's great. And similarly, I was hoping that you could share a story of just turning back a few years and think of your younger self. What advice would you have given your younger self early on in your career journey? I know you've talked of humility, making sure you can try to find some guidance, but what would be that one piece of advice?
Oh man, I would have learned self-care practices a lot earlier. I mean, I was burnt out, and then I flipped over and burnt out the other side. Like I was all over the place. I think I think I would tell her to give yourself grace for your mistakes. Don't let it take the toll of, perfectionism and trying to get things right. And also, boundaries. Boundaries. I think that's might be the core of the first couple of things I've said. Making sure that you know your boundaries. Don't be inflexible, but get to know them more, and so you can assert them later on, about what works for you to preserve your mental health, physical health, and well-being.
Absolutely. I feel like it's Black professionals and young Black professionals in general, we tend to be our own toughest critics, in a world that scrutinizes us sin, makes us feel inferior. We subconsciously are our own biggest critics. And so I really appreciate that piece of advice. And I think it really leads well into the next question, where in a career that requires a significant amount of emotional investment, as you seek to achieve equity, how do you prioritize your mental health?
I go back. I read a lot of Baldwin, and one of my favorite quotes is he says to be a Black person. He does not say Black person, but to be a Black person in this country is to be in a near constant state of rage. That hit me a long time ago, and one way that I preserve my mental health is to recognize my rage and translate it and turn it into joy, and hold spaces for joy. So any of the committees that I run or groups that I belong to, We have an equity council that I've been chairing for the last couple of years, and I'll be damned if we don't laugh, and we don't, we don't express joy openly, and we don't cry together because we've had joy together. But man, I hold spaces for joy, and that's our resistance. That's our, we can be serious, we can get down, and we can get angry at the drop of a dime, and I can, but we get safe spaces for joy at work. That can make all the difference for somebody on a day. I really can. And so I really take that serious. I take joy seriously, because it's my mental health too, because I can't be hearing the things I'm hearing and seeing the things I'm seeing and not want to not want to go off. So I want to be in spaces where joy is part of this resistance and part of this work and DEI work. And so I make it, and that's what I do. I make that space.
That's so important. Yeah, it's so easy to really always try to push for change and forget to, remind yourself that we need rest and we need that time to experience true joy.
Do and connection.
Absolutely. I would love to ask a follow-up to that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as how do you preserve yourself if you had experience on it? I know you do working in white-led spaces where people may not simply just don't understand your lived experience as much as you may try to explain it. How do you navigate that disconnect and how it impacts your mental health as far as, like you said, being in a constant state of rage? Because I know oftentimes as Black folk in these professional spaces working on DEI, it almost perpetuates that feeling of having to explain our trauma time and time again. So have you had any personal impact with that?
Yeah, I think that what I do, well, there are a couple of things that I do. So one of them is I tell people how to interact with me, and I set my boundaries pretty clearly. So I say, I'm not going to talk. I don't want to talk about that, or I'm not going to talk about that. If I'm in a space where I'm in a meeting where my trauma or the trauma of the people that are around me are being brought to the forefront, I ask to leave the meeting, or I step back. I've done that. And in any meeting that right now I'm in the position to hold a lot of spaces where I say, if you need to go, this is open door. That's important. Preserve yourself. I've done it all. I've cried, I've vented, I wrote. And in my day-to-day interactions, if something does come up, sometimes I have to model and say, I have to model the kind of ways I want to be interacted with. So I have this friend who's South Asian descent. Somebody made a comment about food that she brought in from home. And, you say, okay, this person is not the reason that this interaction happened, maybe it's because this person hasn't taken the time to get to know you. Right. They don't have the grounding. They haven't had the grounding. I think this is a story. This is something that's actually happened and I've seen, and a story that Dr. Anu Taranhath, who's also brilliant, brings up. But they haven't taken the time to build the trust to get to know you. Hey, how's your day? Hi, how you doing? How you been? Like those small micro connections that can happen over time. I model those when people come at me with something pretty egregious that you would have to build some trust with me to ask those questions, or to comment on my hair, or to comment on these things. And these all happen to me. Right. So I retreat, I don't answer. And then I say, hey, how was your day? And they go, how was your day? And I try to model for them proper interaction that is acceptable to me. And that's hard. That takes you getting over the anger first.
Right.
And then saying, you know what? This person doesn't know any better, or they know better and they just got to do better. And so I have pretty direct conversations. When I've been in situations, after George Floyd's murder, I was in a call with all white colleagues, and all of them were crying all at the same time. I've been in situations where comments have been made about my hair and my work not being important. I mean, I've seen it and had it all thrown at me. And there is not a time where I haven't in those moments, it hasn't hurt, right? Like it hurts a little bit. It's either a paper cut or it's something else. But what's beautiful about me and the work that I do is that I will heal and I'm going to move forward. They may not ever, and they may not have the opportunity, but with me, I will heal. I will move forward, and I will still express myself and my joy. But I model, I redirect, and I exit a situation that is not healthy for me. Set boundaries. This is something that the working world is going to have to learn to do, especially with emerging professionals, and that's something I'm hoping to prepare this organization for.
Thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing that. And I really wanted to dive into, for our last question, this idea of authenticity, and you've talked about it, showing up as yourself in the spaces you have, and it's lended to your success. And lastly, I would really just like to ask you, what does Blackness mean to you?
That's a deep question. I worked for our Black Museum for 8 years. You know, like I said, like Baldwin really said it best. I mean, all the beauty and the rage and the pain, all mixed together in the hue of our skin, but it does not, I believe, Blackness stands on its own and not in relation to what we've experienced in this country. We can just be ourselves in that identity. I don't know what it means to, I can never ever speak on the spectrum but I can, for me, know that my Blackness is bigger than what my experiences are in relation to my identity. It is bigger than the racism that is pervasive and institutional. It is bigger than the laws that are moving forward. It is bigger than any of the hate and vitriol that we experience. It's bigger than anti-Blackness. And that my expression of it is true and blessed. And I cannot, the more I can express that, the more I can hold space for others to express that too. But it is bigger. I won't relate my Blackness to white supremacy. White supremacy is on its own monster. But I am Black beyond these sort of the country and the institution that has oppressed this identity. So
I love that. Just really highlighting the beauty in Blackness.
So truly share.
Yeah, lastly, oh, sorry, Leilani, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask if you had anything else to add. Just you've shared so much valuable information and knowledge, but if there's anything that we didn't cover, please feel free to share.
Yeah, I think I have, okay, so I'll share this. I come from a non-traditional background. So I like I said, was a mom fairly young and single a few years after that. And I so been a parent. I went to school later in life. I didn't I basically, like I said, live paycheck to paycheck. I didn't come from the wealth. I don't come from legacy wealth. I have a lot of parts of my life that contribute to the reasons I do what I do now. But bringing and being authentic means sharing that and being open with folks and saying, this is where my inspiration comes from. I think that if we are not liberated, then nobody's liberated.
Yeah.
And I'll keep working on this until I can't anymore. For a lot of reasons. So I just hope that other folks get involved, get into the profession, and preserve their joy. And that's it.
Black joy.
That's right.
So important to celebrate. Well, Leilani, thank you so much again for sharing all of this knowledge that you have. And I really am so excited to have you featured on our very first podcast episode. And it's just been a pleasure chatting with you. Your story is so important, and I'm so excited for others to hear it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I am honored and just grateful for you both, Tiana and Brad. Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing work.
Thank you. I want you to know that what you said today really spoke to me. And I know it'll speak to a lot of young professionals who are navigating the space. So your story is important.
Thank you. Hope so. And folks, I like to talk to people, so folks can reach out to me. Open.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Leilani. Have a good
Thank you. All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are so grateful for your support, and thank you for listening to Identity Unboxed.
Authenticity is your guide to cast an impact on the world that you will be proud of. Signing off with pride, Tiana
and Brad.
Thank you so much.